They cut their way out of the only shelter they had to run barefoot into a frozen hell that would kill them all. This wasn't just a tragic accident in the mountains. This was a systematic failure, a terrifying event that left 9 experienced people dead, mutilated, and radioactive, while the powers that be stamped the file classified and buried the truth for 6 decades. We are talking about the Dyatlov Pass Incident, and when you look at the details, it reads less like a hiking trip and more like a crime scene where the perpetrator was something the government refused to name. Let's set the scene because context is everything when you are looking at a cover-up this massive. It is January 1959. The Soviet Union is pushing for industrial and athletic dominance. Igor Dyatlov, a brilliant 23-year-old engineering student, assembles a dream team. These aren't amateurs. These are the best of the best. 7 men, 2 women. They are radio engineers, nuclear physics students, and construction experts. They are the future of the state. They are tough, intelligent, and utterly fearless. Their goal is Otorten, a mountain peak. In the local Mansi language, Otorten translates to, "Do not go there." That is the kind of warning you listen to, but they didn't. They were young and invincible. There was a 10th member, Yuri Yudin. He is the only reason we know the beginning of this story because his body gave out before the horror started. Joint pain saved his life. He turned back at a mining settlement, hugging his friends goodbye, completely unaware that he was the last outsider to ever see them breathing. For the rest of his life, he carried the crushing weight of survivor's guilt, obsessed with finding out what slaughtered his friends while he sat safe at home. The remaining 9 pushed into the wilderness. The conditions were brutal. We are talking minus 30 degrees Celsius, winds that cut like razor blades, and snow that never stops. But they were handling it. They were documenting it. They even made a mock newspaper called The Evening Otorten. In it, they wrote a joke headline, "From now on, we know that the snowmen exist." They were laughing about the cold, making jokes about Yetis, completely unaware that the wilderness was about to chew them up. On February 1st, they made a choice that experts are still arguing about. They camped on the exposed slope of Kholat Syakhl. That name? It translates to Dead Mountain. They pitched their tent 300 meters from the summit. They ate dinner. They took off their boots. They got into their sleeping bags. And then, chaos broke loose. Something happened that was so terrifying, so immediate, that they didn't even unzip the tent entrance. They pulled out knives and slashed the canvas from the inside. They burst out into the pitch-black night, into minus 40-degree weather, wearing nothing but socks and underwear. They left their coats. They left their boots. They left their food. You do not do that unless the thing inside the tent is scarier than freezing to death. Search teams didn't find them for weeks. When they did, the scene was a nightmare that defied logic. The tent was empty. Footprints led down the slope, not running, not panicked, but walking in an orderly line. That is the detail that keeps you up at night. They walked calmly to their deaths. The first 2 bodies, the 2 Yuris, were found under a cedar tree a mile away. They were stripped to their underwear. They had tried to build a fire with frozen branches. Their hands were torn and bloody. The tree itself was damaged, branches broken 5 meters up, suggesting they were frantically climbing to escape something on the ground or to see something back at the tent. They died of hypothermia, their bodies giving up in the snow. Then they found 3 more, Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida, and Rustem. They were scattered on the slope, frozen in poses that suggested they were trying to crawl back to the tent. They realized the fire wasn't enough. They tried to return to the gear they abandoned. They didn't make it. Rustem had a cracked skull, but the cold is what killed them. At this point, the authorities wanted to wrap it up. Just a tragedy, just the cold. But 4 hikers were still missing. It took 2 months for the snow to melt enough to find them. And this is where the story shifts from a tragedy to a horror show. They were found in a ravine, buried under 4 meters of snow, and the injuries they sustained were impossible. Ludmila Dubinina had chest trauma so severe it was comparable to being hit by a car moving at highway speeds. Her ribs were pulverized. But here is the kicker. There were no external wounds, no bruises. It was like she had been crushed by a giant pressure from the inside out. And it gets worse. She was missing her tongue. Not cut out, but gone. The tissue of her mouth, gone. Semyon Zolotaryov, the oldest of the group, a war veteran, was missing his eyes. The medical examiner was baffled. He stated clearly that no human could have inflicted this damage. There was no sign of a struggle, no sign of other people. Just 9 bodies, some crushed by an invisible force, some frozen solid, all fleeing a terror that left no footprints. Then came the radiation. When they ran Geiger counters over the clothes, the needles jumped. The clothing contained radioactive contamination. Why? One of the hikers had worked at a secret nuclear facility, sure, but the levels were suspicious. And then there were the lights. Witnesses in the area, including the military and local tribes, reported seeing glowing orange spheres floating in the sky that night. Fire orbs hovering over Dead Mountain. So what did the Soviet government do? They did what any massive, corrupt entity does when things go sideways. They buried it. The lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, was finding evidence of something unexplainable. He had the reports of the lights. He had the radiation data, but his superiors ordered him to shut it down. They told him to remove the witness statements about the UFOs. They told him to close the case. The official conclusion? They stamped the file with a phrase that is legally meaningless and philosophically terrifying. The hikers died due to a compelling natural force. That's it. Case closed. Area sealed off for 3 years. Families told to stop asking questions. They buried the bodies in zinc coffins and told the parents it was an accident. Lev Ivanov later admitted he was pressured. He went to his grave believing that the glowing spheres had something to do with it. He knew the investigation was a sham. He knew they were hiding the truth to protect state secrets, whether it was a failed weapon test, a rocket launch gone wrong, or something even stranger. Years later, after the Soviet Union collapsed, the files were opened. But guess what? Pages were missing. An envelope that should have contained key evidence was empty. The government had sanitized the record. Recently, they tried to reopen it. In 2020, they came out with a new theory, a slab avalanche. They used computer models from the movie Frozen to prove that a block of snow could have crushed their chests. It's a neat, tidy scientific explanation. It explains the blunt force trauma. It explains the tent cut. But it doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain the radiation. It doesn't explain the missing eyes and tongue. Scavengers are the easy answer. But the specific nature of the soft tissue loss is still debated. It doesn't explain why experienced mountaineers would walk into the night without boots. It doesn't explain the orange lights seen by independent witnesses. And it certainly doesn't explain why the government acted so guilty, hiding documents and silencing investigators. This wasn't just nature acting alone. This was an event where the reaction of the authorities was just as suspicious as the deaths themselves. You have a group of young, bright people who walked into a zone that might have been a testing ground for something the public wasn't supposed to see. They saw something, or they were hit by something, that terrified them beyond the capacity for rational thought. 65 years later, the snow still falls on Dead Mountain. The monument stands there, listing the names of the 9 who never came home. We have theories, infrasound-inducing panic, secret military parachute mines, katabatic winds, but we don't have the truth. The state took that truth, locked it in a vault, and threw away the key. The Dyatlov Pass Incident remains the ultimate cold case, a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't the wilderness itself, but the secrets hidden within it. They walked up that mountain, and whatever they found, or whatever found them, made sure they never walked down. And the system made sure we would never truly know why.
A vault of secrets most will never find.
Unlock the hidden treasures. Vex Vault. Subscribe and hit the bell.